Are we talking like, oh yes, he's seen 40 winters, he is the oldest among us? Or like, oh yeah, that lady, she's been around for like 130 years, but she throws killer parties. Welcome to A Book and a Dream with Megan O'Russell, an author's adventure in writing, reading, and being an epic fangirl. Hello, my name is Megan O'Russell, and welcome to episode 71 of A Book and a Dream. You've walked through a wardrobe, you've been hit on the head, you've found a mysterious talisman, and all of a sudden you are in a fantasy world. What questions do you need to ask before you decide if you want to stay permanently or head on back through the wardrobe to get home? Now, these questions are not only important in case you should ever find yourself in a fantasy world with the opportunity to stay or leave, but for authors as well. By using world-building techniques and deciding what the answers to these questions are, we can give our readers a fuller and more realistic experience that allows them to dive into our books in a way that makes them think, maybe through the wardrobe really is better. My number one question, if I were to find myself on the other side of a wardrobe, would be what is the healthcare situation here like, and what's the average life expectancy? See, there is a very big difference between there being an old lady who lives in the hut in the woods who may or may not have a root she could give you that may or may not save you, and having, I don't know, healers that can actually do things, or sorcerers who can pull the demons from your body. Like, what's your chances of surviving a fever? If you get a small wound and it gets an infection, what's their plan? Could you survive an amputation? These are all important things to know if you're going to live in a fantasy world, because accidents happen and you don't want to die of gangrene. Also, what's the average life expectancy like? When we're talking about village elders, are they like 54 or 120? Because that is a big difference. Are we talking like, oh yes, he's seen 40 winters, he is the oldest among us? Or like, oh yeah, that lady, she's been around for like 130 years, but she throws killer parties. Big difference. Which one am I looking at? Because I need to know in order to make an informed decision of whether or not I'd like to head on back through that wardrobe. Question number 2. Are women allowed to own property? Are women allowed to rule? Are women considered property? Where exactly do women stand in this society? Because yes, we all deal with the patriarchy. Yes, pockets are rare for women in this world, but it could be worse in the fantasy world. Like, if I can't own property, do I want to stay in a fantasy world? Because if I can't live out my dream of living in a hut in the woods with like woodland creatures surrounding me, I'm not sure if I'm interested in staying there. And I don't mean just like, is there a queen of this country? I mean, is there a queen who's the ruler, not the one with the pretty jewels who sits beside the king? There is a big difference there. Also, are women allowed to be educated? Can women read? Can women be in charge of other things? Can women be a part of religion? These are all things I need to know before deciding if I'm going to permanently transplant to the fantasy world. Question number 3. What's the birth control situation like, and are there chastity laws in place? Because sure, going into a fantasy world and finding a handsome knight could be fun. But if going into a fantasy world, finding a handsome knight and having a roll in the hay could get you executed for breaking the chastity laws, the fun factor goes down. And if there's no birth control, so going into the fantasy world, meeting a handsome knight, having a roll in the hay ends up with fantasy babies, also less fun. And if that means going into a fantasy world, finding a handsome knight, having a roll in the hay, ending up with fantasy babies, and you can't even buy a house because women aren't allowed to own property, so where are you supposed to raise this fantasy baby? Yeah, that's a definite no from me. Question number 4. How long do winters last around here? Now, maybe it's only me, but for me personally, the winter thing would be a deal breaker. Are we talking like 4 to 5 months of winter? 9 months of winter? 10 years of winter? A century of winter? How long am I going to be cold for, and what is your winter wear like? Am I going to be wearing little fur slippers getting frostbite every day for the next 10 years because that's how long winter lasts? Yeah, no. I want to live somewhere with spring and summer and warmth and joy. If I'm just going to be cold and wet all the time, I'm going back through the wardrobe. No, I'm not staying. Question number 5. Are there magical creatures in this world? If so, can I ride on them, or are they going to try to eat me? Because if I can ride on the back of a dragon and we're going to be best friends, like, I'm all in. That sounds amazing. But if I'm going to be murdered in my sleep by some weird fantasy creatures with claws, maybe not so much. If there's just like shadow monsters that are going to creep into my house, rip my stomach open, and eat my entrails while I'm still alive, I'm leaving. Now, if like maybe a dragon might eat me, but there's probably going to be one who's my friend, I'd have to do some really deep soul searching. Question number 6. When I say cursed, how literally are you taking me? Is it like a cursed slipper? I personally have been cursed and will suffer for the next 1,000 years. This whole mountain range has been cursed and like one of us is going to die every night. How seriously are we taking this curse, and how painful is the journey going to be to lift the curse? This also fits in with the whole, are there healers and how talented are they? Also, are there magical creatures and how likely are they to kill me? See, it all rolls up into one little bundle of what are my chances of surviving past the next 3 days? Because if you only get 3 days in a fantasy world, maybe like peace out and come home. Because getting your entrails ripped out just doesn't sound fun. Now, this is by no means an exhaustive list of all the questions you should ask if you ever happen to find yourself in a fantasy world. No matter if you get there through the wardrobe, the head bonk, the talisman, you wish you were there, whatever. These are all things that you should ask. You should also ask things like, what is the local law enforcement like? How high are taxes? Are they going to murder me if I can't pay my taxes? Things like that. All questions you need to know before deciding to buy real estate in a new area. If they allow you to buy real estate. Things you can never take for granted in a fantasy world. So, whether you're a reader deciding if you want to live in the new Narnia, or if you're an author who's trying to create a new Narnia, consider these things when you think about your fantasy world. And for the authors, decide what kind of world you want to create. Is it going to be a utopia that readers will imagine themselves landing in so that they can go on heroic quests? Or do you think you're creating a fantasy world and it's really a dystopia? Think about it. What things are important and which questions are deal breakers for you? Now, let me know in the comments, or if you're on a platform that doesn't have comments, head on over to one of my social media pages or YouTube to let me know. Also, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all those lovely things that you can make sure you see the next video. Until next time, may you dream of a world where winter is short, skirts are shorter, and of course, women are allowed to have pockets. See you next time.